Welcome back to the Culture Crusade, and that intro was stuttering for me, so I don't know if the internet is going to die on me today.
It worked for me.
Yeah, right. So if I just like drop out or I start freezing, let me know. But it's good to be back. Okay, so it's been a bit of a slow week for pop culture kind of related stuff. There are topics, but it also opens up an opportunity for me to talk about something that's been on my mind, hence the title of this live stream, about anime isekai. And it's like it's been going off for several years now. There is so many of them, and so I want to talk a little bit about the genre, why it's popular, some of the trends, the oversaturation a bit, some of the good stuff. Because here, like this last week, I watched a new one, and it was a surprisingly charming, nothing super great, but I enjoyed it enough that I ended up binging the whole thing. And so I'll talk a little bit about that one as well. But before we dive into it, how are you guys going? How's your week been? A good one?
Doing all right. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, good to hear. Good to hear. Mike, what you been up to?
I'm just frazzled. I have to leave on Wednesday. I'm going to a crypto conference in Denver. So it's like, I'm just trying to get all this stuff. And then like, I had someone notify me on Comic Art Fans about this double page spread they wanted to buy, and I'm like, I have no idea where that thing is. So I'm going through. I mostly have kept all my pages most of my career, so I'm like FedEx box after FedEx box after FedEx, just going through all this stuff, and I just found it about 10 minutes ago. So I was like,
well, after hearing some things about some cryptocurrency, the term CryptoCon would be kind of an interesting one.
Well, it's ETH Denver, so Ethereum is one of the big ones. So it's not scam coin Denver.
Yeah, all
my money
coins.
My money flowed away with when I invested in the very prestigious Haktua coin.
Haktua coin.
Oh, did you really though?
No.
I
don't think anyone got to really.
People lost.
I would not have either, and I'm not investing in Yay coin. If that
people lost so much money on the Haktua one. Some of these meme coins are just, oh my gosh, it's getting out of hand.
Well, here's the thing that happens: you get the girl Haley Welch, whatever. She didn't intend to do this. Someone probably came to her and they're like, "Let's do this," and they seemed very, noble and all of that stuff. And then they launched it with her, and the devs rugged it. The devs just she probably didn't get jack squat, but she gets all the blame.
This is kind of exactly what happened, because I got some stuff from these coins. Hey, we have a meme coin we want you to promote from like what's called Pump.Fund or something. Is this?
Yeah, Pump Fund, dude. That thing has it's like the casino. It's it's ruining people's lives, and it's making a very small handful of people extraordinarily rich.
Well, let's not bury the lead and start talking about it, but we'll get into some of the there are some news items just through the week, but from experience, we can get hooked on one news item for like 20 minutes to an hour sometimes. And so I don't want us to leave us too little room to actually talk about the subject of the stream and what's been on my mind. And so, all right, let's talk a little bit about Isekai. First off, let's find out how familiar our panelists are for Isekai. Mike, I know LitDev is probably very familiar, but Mike, have you heard of Isekai?
No, you told me what it was beforehand. I don't read a lot of manga. I don't know how. I don't watch a lot of anime because I love anime. This sounds kind of contradictory, but I love anime because it's art and I want to watch it. But I don't have time to watch stuff. And when I sit down with my wife for the few hours we have together to watch TV, she doesn't freaking want to watch anime. So it's like
you're a
when
dumb.
I had COVID, I watched a lot of anime. I just
My wife's a bit the same. She just can't get past the cartoon aspect of it, and she finds some of the overly high-pitched voices were far too grating for her. But I think I've watched Spirited Away with her, and she liked that, and so she can she loves some
Ghibli stuff too. Yeah, Ghibli.
Those things like Wizard of Oz, that's technically Isekai. Alice in Wonderland, also Isekai.
Well, we'll talk about the legacy of Isekai a bit, because it's not anything new. This kind of concept goes back real far, right? And
Yankee Arthur's Court, Isekai.
oh, that's another good one. Yeah. I'm writing that one down.
My Prince and the Pauper story would be isekai.
Right?
As long as they go to another world.
Right. Wait.
What's
Can't they
interesting
just
though?
be the past?
It could be the past.
It's just another world.
Well, no, remember I said the Prince and the Pauper wanted a poor kid from modern world to go trade places with a prince from medieval world, and then the prince doesn't want to go back because it sucks so bad being a prince in the medieval time compared to being a poor kid in America in 21st century.
Well, yeah, this concept goes back a good while. Right? It's nothing new. It's just interesting the tropes that have arisen in modern day anime and how much there is of it, and so yeah, there's quite a discussion here because there are some good ones amongst it all. But there's also quite a bit of slop being shoveled out that's just like really generic, samey kind of stuff. And so I also want to talk a bit about what makes a good kind of isekai, as well as a legacy and things that I watched recently and other stuff.
Is Gulliver's Travels the original isekai story?
It's possible.
That's another one. All right, we're gonna probably get started on the legacy of isekai and going about some of the first type ones. And they're not isekai. Isekai is distinctly a Japanese term for it, even though the concept of this, you could almost call it theme, this style.
Mhm.
Like stories have been made with this for ages back. But before we do that, Lit Dev, what's your familiarity with the isekai kind of concepts?
I've seen quite a few. I love, just Alice in Wonderland, of course, Wizard of Oz, but also the manga stuff. Overlord is probably one of the most prestigious right now, like the most well known. It's like really good garbage. It gets really.
So which is bigger, Overlord or That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime?
Yes, I tried watching that one, didn't like it very much. There's a subgenre of like isekai where the main character goes to the other world and just starts eating things to get powers, and like it's not really my thing.
But there's a surprising amount of them.
There's like a subgenre, and like there's a one where this guy became like a goblin in another world, and so just starts eating things, and he gets more and more powers.
And that's some of the lazy tropes that do appear, even though there seems to be some good ones amongst them that people do really like. There are some just rinse and repeat kind of tropes where someone just dies and just randomly reincarnates in a fantasy world or a video game or something like that. And they give no explanation for it. They're just there. And then they get this.
Usually it's Truck-kun. They usually get hit by a truck.
Yeah.
In fact, in Konosuba, the parody of the modern isekai, the main character ends up in front of the goddess and is like, "Oh, I remember that. There was this kid. She was about to get hit by a truck, and I pushed her out of the way, and I must have got hit by the truck instead and died." And then the goddess is like, "No, you didn't. That was like a slow moving tractor, and she wasn't even in any danger. You just thought you got hit by a truck and died." Of a heart attack, and your family laughed at you while you were in the hospital because of how pathetic you are.
See, that I can laugh at when people kind of make fun of the tropes, and then in addition to they usually get an odd, often considered useless power that is actually secretly OP that they leverage their advantage to become insanely powerful and tough. And that's
they're usually either OP or they're really underpowered, and they have one skill they use very cleverly.
Like there's this one that I saw on Crunchyroll that is just like, look, it's so odd. I'm just wondering. It's like there's something I forget. I don't know the name, but their only skill is their appraisal skill, that they can look at something and appraise it and find out its unique properties. But they use that to kind of curate tough people or something like that, and then win that way. And that I was like, all right, there are some kind of fun, quirky kind of things that you can do with it that can make it less stale, even though it is pretty lazy with some of the tropes that they're falling back to and just rinsing and repeating.
And do a crossover with Pawn Stars, it would be great.
Oh, the appraisal skill, yeah. Well, here's the one I watched this week.
It's a pawn shop.
So the one I watched this week was surprisingly charming, yet wasn't like earth-shatteringly, amazing, but I enjoyed it. It's called Saving 80,000 Gold in Another World for My Retirement.
Yeah, it sounds about right. That's good. because it's called Chilling in Another World with My Fox Girl Girlfriend or something like that. It's kind of some of them are just like on point. Like I just want to chill out and not live in this world anymore.
I know. Like Saving 80,000 Gold Another World does some interesting things that made it interesting and I guess distinctive enough. And there is a concept behind it that attracted me to it, which is the concept of someone actually leveraging their ability and advantages from the modern world, the world we come from, in a fantasy world for their own benefit. And funnily enough, I've literally role-played that in a D&D game where there was a D&D campaign starting amongst my friend. This was years ago, right? And I wanted to do something different. And I thought, I want to play myself. Like literally myself. I want to play myself being teleported into this campaign from the real world. And it was actual Isekai, right? But I was playing me, Shad, in this other world, using only the knowledge I had. But I was using the knowledge I had to give myself advantages. Like I know how to make spring steel, and I introduced I helped work with people to create more advanced, crossbows and other things. And oh, Mike, you'll like this one. I also brought Christianity with me, and I was converting people and stuff. And look,
hey, I'm trying my darndest to convert AI. So
yeah.
You're a cleric in the other world. Like, oh, you're a cleric.
So I've done that, and it's just interesting. Like basic bits of knowledge that you have from the modern world can be earth shattering in a medieval world. And so this anime, saving 80,000 gold in a fantasy world for my retirement, actually kind of works with that concept. I was like, okay, I'm gonna check it out. And funnily enough, they did a good job with it in terms of the character's approach, her advantages that she got, and how she did it. And I'll talk a bit more about it. But first, let's reel it back and talk about the actual legacy of this.
Okay, have you actually seen a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court?
No, I know of it, but I haven't seen
it. Okay. Yeah, he actually makes a revolver.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. It's fun.
Very American.
Right. So the if you could call it a genre, it's not necessarily anything new in particular. Like if you go back, or some of the OG kind of person going to another world, you've got Wizard of Oz, is definitely that concept. The Never-Ending Stories, Chronicles of Narnia is a big one, and that one is like got a big legacy in terms of cultural influence and people reading it over several generations. And then you've mentioned Yankee and King Arthur's Court. Gulliver's Travels would technically be one as well. And hang on, there's a weird like anime is beneath you. What the hell?
Gulliver's Travels was published in 1726. That's probably the earliest we're gonna get.
Let's not. I want to jump on this because this kind of looking down the nose at anime, I find very silly because anime is a genre. There's good anime, there's bad anime, there's wholesome anime, there's perverted anime. Saying anime is like just dumb or beneath you or anything like that. It's like saying music is dumb or beneath you.
Anime is just literally the Japanese animation industry. Remember what?
Yeah,
when I was a kid, it was called Japanimation. They shortened it to anime at some point, like in the 90s.
Yeah. And to try and write it all off is just really short-sighted and dumb, honestly. You're guaranteed there's an anime that you would love, just like there's a movie that you will love. It's just in an animated style that is really caught on in Japan. And I'm not saying there isn't cringe crap anime. There definitely is.
And that's also a misnomer. I mean, there's like a very common style, but anime is all kinds of different styles.
Oh, yeah. Like look at Studio Ghibli, which
like
is...
and that's what anime is,
Exactly.
Studio Trigger probably is like another recognizable one. Like everyone knows Studio Trigger, which is a lot of what was it? Kill la Kill. I think they did Kill la Kill. They're doing Dungeon Meshi. Delicious in Dungeon. There's another one they famously did. I forgot what it was, but they're known for having high energy things, like high energy animation. Everyone loves Studio Trigger. Yeah. I think they did what was it called? The one with we must go up with the robots and the masculinity. I don't know if I forgot what it's called, but they had a drill robot or something. And Kamina, his name, everyone loves Kamina.
Oh, really?
Gurren Lagann. That was it. Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, Gurren Lagann. So some of the chat, they understand. Anime is a medium. It's an artistic medium that can cater to any genre you can think of. In fact, I don't know. This does seem to be a trend of anime. They go into angles and stories and concepts that are so out of left field, wacky and weird, and stuff that you would never think you would make a show around. Like some of the weird stuff.
That's because Japan never had the whole comics are for kids thing, right? That whole Wortham thing in the 50s or whatever, where they created the comics code, and I like the comics code, but it's like it created this whole common genre that the zeitgeist of comics in America became, it's a kids medium. And so Japan never went through that. So they have always made manga for everybody. If you want a cooking manga, if you want a soccer manga, if you want a needlepoint manga, they probably have that, right? They have a manga for it's just
really
books,
everything,
illustrated books, and they have every genre. And that's when something gets popular enough, they make it for the anime audience. So it's like, that's why it's like,
I want to talk.
It's every genre, imagine.
Talk a bit of that, but remember, stay angry. Just give it 29 Scotch memberships. Holy crap, dude! Thank you very much, legend. Really appreciate that.
A lot of memberships.
Yeah, that is a lot of memberships. That's awesome. But Mike, what you're saying there is that like they have catered for nearly every interest and genre for a good while now. And one of the other things, and I highlighted the comment before, anime is kicking butt at the moment. Like so much modern Western entertainment has just lost the plot, especially the Western comic book industry, where they got suckered into the whole woke mind virus narrative and ended up catering to an audience of people that just don't read comic books. And then
that's what I said about DC and Marvel. Like the only thing manga is doing is this catering to specific audiences, where DC and Marvel's like, let's put everything in the superhero genre. So it's like, okay, we wanted to get women in here, buy our books, so we're going to put romance and lesbian romance and all kinds of crap in and then shove it all in the superhero genre, instead of making, okay, here's a superhero genre, here's maybe a romance line we can have, or maybe here's like an action line we can have. But instead, they kind of insist on putting social issues and crap into the superhero genre and just messing up everything. And then that's something like really nobody wants. Where manga has like, here's a book for these people, here's a book for this interest and this interest and this interest and this interest. And it's just not really working so well over here, because you can't just shove everything into one pot. It'll be way better if they kind of divided it into different interests.
And not only that,
the funny thing about that is, to the superhero genre, and most of the big anime that everybody loves and everybody's here for, they're superheroes. They are just dressed up in something else. They're kids or people. They get superpowers, whether it's through magic of ninjutsu or whatever.
Or the Hitsu style.
Right? They all have these superpowers. They're all superheroes, but they're just not wearing spandex and parading.
Kenshin is a superhero, goes around fighting bad guys, fighting crime, is almost like a vigilante, justice seeker, right?
And the Hitsu style is canonically so powerful, they're not allowed to get involved in conflicts because they just win.
They call it godlike speed. He's so fast that it's, they call it godlike.
Beyond godlike speed.
Yeah, right. And so
Demon Slayer, total freaking
Demon Slayer, absolutely. And so like these are kind of superheroes wrapped in different packaging, but now they've also just started wrapping them in traditional packaging, like
Academia.
My Hero Academia, even though it is still very anime, it isn't as traditional, but they're playing on that trope. Same with One Punch Man.
Yeah, but One Punch Man turns the whole trope on its head. That's why it's so funny.
Right. But that's the other thing. They will take more traditional kind of concepts and then do something really wacky and original with it. But that's not to say always. Sometimes they just recycle and regurgitate a lot of common tropes that we see with modern day isekai going around. But the other thing that anime has really done well and continues to do well, which ensures that there's slop in anime, but they are still making some really good stuff. And it's that meritocracy is still very much part of the process. You talked about this before, Mike, how they would make a manga and they would test it in sometimes like a magazine, that'll be thing, or it would just be, make a manga, see if it catches on. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Hirohiko Araki said something like that. He detailed his experiences. Where I think he mentioned somebody. I think it was the guy who made Ultimate Muscle, where it's like or something like that, where he got chosen out of high school, and so the guy Hirohiko Araki was like, "Wait a minute, that means I can get chosen out of high school." So he kind of worked really hard, and you're allowed, when he was around anyway, you can get published from as anybody can get published as long as you're good, but the editors are just demons. They will make you cry. They will tear you down to pieces. It wasn't uncommon for someone to go coming right crying right out of the editor's room. But you can get published. But if you do get published, you're not like home free. You're on probation period. You're going to see if you sell. If you don't sell, you're out. But you can come back again with a different story. That's kind of
exactly. And that enables.
The thing is that you get in front of the audience, so it's not like you have to like try to fight because you get published in one of these anthologies. These anthologies, everybody reads them, and then they just throw them away. They have no interest. It's not a collector's market, right? And then like, they put the hottest, greatest stuff up in front, but they sell the whole thing, and it has all these different stories. And if people respond to your story, like LitDev says, that's when the meritocracy kicks in. But you at least get shown when you're published. You're not like someone doesn't have to go out of the way to try a new book, right? It's part of the book, big old phone book they get every week. Anyways.
And that enables the cream to rise to the surface and people to discover new kind of stories and ideas that haven't been tried before that ends up catching on, and it creates new trends where Hollywood is so deathly afraid of trying something new at the moment, where they're just like prequels, sequels, reboots constantly, because they think those are sure things. And also same with the TV series, where back in the day they had pilots to test if something was going to be popular. Now with the streaming service, they just throw them, we'll make a whole series, and it's not popular because it sucked and they didn't test it. It's like, well, they'll cancel it after season 1. And so as a result, the stuff coming out of Japan, and not just Japan, mind you, but countries that actually have a system that's built on working with what's popular and meritocracy and stuff, they're making some really good stuff that is starting to kick the crap out of the things we're making over here in the West. The best superhero kind of thing made recently, I've enjoyed. There's been some American and Western ones, but My Hero Academia is one of the most popular. And that's straight out of Japan. And some of the biggest series, like manga sales, is kicking the crap out of comic book sales. And it's becoming more and more popular. And one of the other things that Japan is still doing, which is a big strength to the stories that they're making, they're still making traditional heroes. Traditional heroism, masculinity at its center, with wholesome themes and concepts. And like, My Hero Academia is full of those ones. And those ones are like, I'm happy. I go out of my way to let my kids watch and enjoy, because it has just these traditional wholesome messages that we want in storytelling. And
Midoriya cries a lot, but he is pretty good. He's a pretty good because he tries and he works hard.
Yeah, there's good themes and messages in it. Absolutely. And so anime is still going strong and is pretty popular as a result. And Hollywood and American comic books, they could learn a thing or two, or just try and remember some of their how to make good stuff.
Because Japan got all that from us.
They did.
They got that from us. They copycats over there.
Yeah, like one of the first animes was literally inspired by American cartoon. Astro Boy was inspired by Betty Boop, which is the American cartoon. And Mickey Mouse, right? But all power to them. If they're making good stuff, I will watch it. I've enjoyed several recent anime, and I'm not like, anime, I have to watch it. There is so much out there, and
big,
a lot
big
of it
dopey
is
anime eyes they're American. That's Disney eyes.
Yeah, Disney.
You
know, speaking of the Isekai genre, there's a whole entire like female version, subgenre of the Isekai genre. But most of the Isekai genre that we know today are just kind of like male oriented, where it's a dude that goes into the world, gets a big titty elf girlfriend, and kind of just wins the day. There's another one called this villainous origin, this villainous genre, where it's like they become a villainous in the video game that they love to play. This is a romance video game. There's a lot of those.
Yeah, like because as I've been seeing the trend, right? And I've been seeing it for several years. And by the way, this is nothing new to me, right? Let's list some of the very first isekai anime. Even this was before isekai was even a term, right? This is just the concept. And yeah, so people try to say like, I'm a boomer to this. Don't quote the old law to me there. I was there when it was written. I've seen the Seven Kingdoms, Fushigi Yugi, The Mysterious Play, Inuyasha, Hack Sign, Escaflowne, and I also know of other ones like Tenchi Muyo and stuff like that. These
Tenchi Muyo is good.
Yeah, yep.
Dot Hack Sign. I really like Dot Hack Sign. That was a good one.
I watched it so long ago, I can barely remember much of it. But have you heard of?
I had one small fan theory with that one, because the super hacker of that whole entire universe is named Helba, and she shows up at the end of the series, and she's voiced by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who's also the voice of Major Kusanagi from San Lone Complex, and they're both super hackers. So like, I had one fan theory that Helba is just Major Kusanagi.
Oh, that's funny.
I just feel Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness, yes, that
Army
is
of Darkness, yeah, that's Isekai, yeah.
I'm adding that one to the list.
My boomstick.
But like Gulliver's Travels, you mentioned when was that made? Like,
I think it says 1725, 1726.
So is it fair to say that like this, even though like isekai is a useful term that Japan now has to refer to this genre, it technically was invented in the West, I guess. Like
yeah, who was that? Jonathan Swift.
Because there are some really old school technical isekais, and again, think of Wizard of Oz, how old that is, and then Chronicles of Narnia, not as old, I believe, but still old school, right? And so this idea of someone leaving out.
Irish.
Is it Irish? You said
it's Irish.
Irish.
Well, the author's Irish. I don't know.
Oh, someone in chat. Midsummer Night Dream. I'm
yeah, it's true.
Really?
Kind of go to this like, this fairy world like out of nowhere.
Yep. So
don't get hit by Truck-kun on that one.
Oh, Tron would qualify as one as well, actually. Yes, I would say Sword Art Online is isekai. I'm going to mention Sword Art Online because I wonder if that's one of the anime that kicked off the boom, you could say, even though it's been around for years. Because again, I think about some of these older anime, like I remember watching some of the first episodes of The Seven Kingdom, which is about a girl that gets taken to a fantasy Chinese, like a Chinese kind of culture fantasy world. And pretty good animation from memory. Fushigi Yugi, The Mysterious Play is an interesting one. That's an old one. I got suckered into watching that whole thing. And in hindsight, I don't think I liked it that much, but it's a very female focused, love story kind of thing.
One of my favorites, there's kind of two that I want to point out, and it's like they're not really all that well known either. Like no one talks about them. One is called I'm the Villainess, so I'm taming the final boss. Where it's like she dies and then she gets reincarnated as the villainess in that epic scene that they all like to play out, where she's getting dumped by the prince, the fiance, and he's dumping her for the sweet innocent princess, or the sweet innocent girl who has light magic and something like that. So she goes away and she goes to the prince's brother, who's the demon lord, and starts like trying to get into his good graces, and she succeeds, and then they fall in love with each other, and it's pretty interesting. Like they start doing crazy shenanigans. It's pretty interesting that he gets like the crown and everything and becomes good. And then we have like another one called this is interesting because it's technically not an isekai, but maybe it is, because it's like ReZero. It's kind of like she lives in that world, but she became like this tyrannical leader. And there was like a revolution that popped up against her, and then she was guillotined. And then after she was guillotined, she woke up again like a few years earlier when she was like a much younger girl, and she has like basically a second chance at life. And she remembers her old memories, and she has her journal to look at. It's called Tear Moon Empire, and so she has a second chance at everything, and she does everything a lot better. But she's also afraid of this like cartoonish like guillotine that she has after her in her dreams. It's like this...
Well, that concept is one that I've just daydreamed about like what it'd be like if I could go into my younger self with all the knowledge I have now and the things that I would mess up in my own timeline and to my own advantage and wreak havoc. And that's actually just been a fun little daydream I've had in the past. And so there we go. There's an isekai based around that. But chat seems to agree with me that that Sword Art Online seems to be one of the things that really made it more mainstream, because that one was just so damn popular, and I know people have very mixed feelings about it. I've watched like the first season. I found it watchable, but I lost interest when they started to need to go into another video game or something like that. But going back to the legacy, yeah, we've got like stuff that goes back way back. So the concept isn't anything new, but what's interesting about it is that we can see that people have appreciated and enjoyed something about it for a good long while. And it's the idea of leaving what we see as a normal world, monotonous world, into something fantastical and strange and different, and having an adventure. Like that's an old school trope. Now,
a lot of it is a concern, like people who are just normal or overlooked in society and everything, and they kind of, oh, I'm really awesome in this world. This is way better.
Well, you can see the DNA of this concept, even though it's not technically isekai. There are similar concepts to that with The Hobbit. Where he is in his own little world, the Shire, and is very average in his own little world, but is taken outside of his world into a world of grand adventure and monsters and strangeness, where such an ordinary person ends up becoming quite extraordinary by just being themselves, but also finding inner new skills and stuff. And so it's very much also related to the idea of adventure fantasy, escapism, stuff like that. But the idea of a normal individual, sometimes often overlooked, going into a great adventure, and effectively the Shire is this pocket little world in the Middle Earth where it's insulated from so many things happening. You could almost at a stretch even classify that as a type of isekai, but not really, because it is the same world. And I think the primary defining feature of this concept is going into another world that you're unfamiliar with. But you can see a lot of similarities and kind of tropes that are shared. And also, as a result, it's, I think, tied with the legacy as well of this kind of concept of someone ordinary going on an adventure in another world. Is a pretty...
Yeah, that's why I wonder if Midsummer Night's Dream counts, because like the main characters, they're already in this world where like one of the characters going to like marry the Queen of the Amazons or something, right? And that's already kind of fantasy setting before we get going.
Yeah. So people have enjoyed this from the get-go. Like I remember watching, the BBC Narnia movies, and just that idea is like, imagine going to a magical fantasy world and adventure and everything. Enjoyed, and you can see why people enjoy it, because it's this secondary kind of, adventure, experience where you imagine yourself in the shoes of the characters going to this other world. And there is a bit of wish fulfillment fantasy part of it, but also kind of like power fantasy stuff that anime is really latched onto.
Yeah, ReZero is like, I think, a big one in that. Have you seen ReZero yet?
I haven't, but that one comes up a lot as a fairly popular one that is quite prominent at the moment.
Because he has no actual powers.
Sorry, what?
Planet of the Apes, yeah, Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes.
Hey,
he's in another world. He's in another world, technically.
Yes, but
a world different than your own.
I think Planet of the Apes qualifies, even though it's at the very far future. I think that because it's such a different world, effectively.
I think time travel counts because it's a whole different world.
Sense, a planet where apes evolved.
Well, I mean, if we allow time travel into it, then it's really like. But I think Planet of the Apes is a bit different because it's such a different world. It's not just the future with humans. It's like it's a fantasy. He effectively thought it was another world when he landed there. It was so different, and it was Earth all along. Damn you! You blew it up.
I love that. It's so good, man. It's so crazy that something like that, kind of like hokey, still like holds up, and they haven't been able to make it better than the original.
You see that video with Arnold Schwarzenegger where they put him in like an AI version of Star Wars?
Yeah.
What?
It's gone now.
Yeah.
You can't get it deleted. They had to delete it or something. But
oh, really?
I have it still if you want to see.
Because I'm trying to think like Obscure old school Arnie movies. I'm thinking like what Running Man, Total Recall, like.
I would say like a Demolition
Guy,
Man. Actually, Demolition Man might be technically isekai because like he wakes up in the future a little bit, and it's like this weirdo world, which is like we thought what the future is going to be. It turns out it's way worse because it's kind of like that, but we have
now.
more. Yeah, it's kind of like now, which is like everything's that sanitized. They have the whole thing where okay, you're not allowed to have sex.
Look, when Demolition Man came out, I never would have in 1,000 years thought it would cost me $40 to feed my family at Taco Bell.
Now it does. It's easy.
It is depressingly prescient in some ways, old Demolition Man. Getting fined for saying naughty words and so
like, I like everywhere. It's like you have been fined 1 credit for the violation. I'm pretty sure like if Kamala Harris had won, we'd have that.
Oh my gosh!
Well, you have been fined $15 for the violation of the hate speech statute or something.
Well, when we get to like Demolition, because holy crap, even like the Time Machine, the old school. Have you seen the original The Time Machine? Right,
that was a long time ago, years
ago.
Yeah.
Eloy and the Morlocks, yeah.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
It's not bad. Like it's actually not bad.
Dude, it's exact like that. The 70s Time Machine. It's like reading the book. Like you read the book, it's like so. It's I don't think I've ever had a more like shot for shot remake or adaptation. It's crazy.
Yeah, 3 seashells. I wouldn't know. I never understood how they described in the film either, and so I could understand
3 seashells.
Yeah, I can understand why Sylvester Stallone had trouble with that. So I would call Demolition Man probably like isekai adjacent, I guess, because the core concept of isekai is more a complete fantasy world. It's another world entirely, and somehow you go there. And so,
unfortunately, that's not so fantasy anymore. Like, we had I think when in Demolition Man they had him like rehabilitated while he was asleep into being way more feminine. Like he knits now. Like,
that's funny. That's right.
He had a curb his testosterone.
It's been so long since I've watched that, but now I remember that. Yeah. Oh gosh. So the idea, the genre, you could say, like this has very old roots in literature and fantasy going back, and even in anime. It's been around in anime for ages. If you look at some of the originals, like Escaflowne is Isekai, Seven Keys of Yugi, Inuyasha, Tenchi Muyo, Hack Sign, all those kind of go back. Interesting enough, most of them are girls going into another world. Escaflowne is a girl going to another world. Seven Kingdoms is a girl going to another world. Fushigi Yugi, girl going to another world.
Cat Returns. There's a Cat Returns. It was a Ghibli movie, I think.
Inuyasha, Hack Sign, and Tenchi Muyo are like the only ones that have guys.
Well Hack Sign technically is a girl because she's a girl, but with a guy's character.
Oh, really? It's been so long since I watched it.
So at the end of the relationship, they're actually a lesbian relationship where she gets in the relationship with the player by Subaru. So he plays Lady Subaru. Who's in a wheelchair, dude.
Here's one that'll.
Oh yeah, I've heard of Magic Knight Re-Earth. I haven't ever watched it though.
Here's a question that'll kind of twist your knickers: does The Matrix count?
No. No, because he grew up in that world technically.
Right, but he ends up in this world.
I guess is the real world. Right.
But there is something called reverse isekai. There's a reverse isekai, which one of my favorites of reverse isekai is Devil's a Part-Timer, where it's like this epic evil devil from another universe who gets beaten and defeated. And so he has to flee somewhere else, but he ends up in our universe and he has no powers here really. So he has to he and his loyal general have to get a job in an apartment, and he works at McDonald's and stuff. And he's like, but he still has a devilish efficiency. So he's like the top number one worker there. And he gets promoted. Everyone loves him. He's like go over the top. He takes everything seriously. So he has like a bike, a really good apartment. He has everything they need. But unfortunately, they get the trouble he runs into is that the hero also chases after him. It's kind of funny. It's one of my favorites. Devil is a Part-Timer.
John Carter of Mars.
Yes.
Yeah, John Carter of Mars is easy.
Carter, that's a great one. Yes, and that is old school. That is old school. So you're talking, Princess of Mars, John Carter.
That one is not PC whatsoever.
Not the original, no. When I heard Disney was doing the remake, I was like, well, they're gonna obviously be sanitizing that. People don't know. The original John Carter of Mars. There's a book called Princess. I think is it the first one, Princess of Mars, Deja Thoris. She's completely naked in the books. And she just doesn't wear clothes. But they, of course, you can understand why Disney changed out of it. I didn't hate the Disney film. John
I loved
Carter.
it.
I thought it was actually fun. Didn't do well.
Horrible. I mean, just calling it John Carter was kind of stupid.
What's interesting about John Carter of Mars is that in the line of books that Alan Moore wrote, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, that's the second storyline. It's invasion. It's a what's it called? War of the Worlds, but like in Victorian times, and it's because the Martians are losing with their war against John Carter, and so they flee to Earth, and so it's a really cool story because they start just destroying everything in Britain because they're super advanced, and that's kind of they make allies with the Invisible Man. Mr. Hyde finds out and rapes him to death. It's a crazy story.
So going along
moving along
in the chronology, its presence in anime has been around here for ages. Presence in literature even further back, and then it seems like something that really shifted things was Sword Art Online. It seems like some in the chat agree with me. Maybe there was another one, but when I think back, it looks like Sword Art Online came out, and it isn't like going into a real fantasy world. It's an online video game that they get trapped in, and their real selves appear in their avatars and stuff. But it is technically that concept going into another world. And Sword Art Online was very popular. People have very mixed opinions on it after the fact. But I remember, when it was kind of being first, consumed in the West, and people really, really into it. And then it seems like after that, more and more and more, and they've just gone, and now there's like hundreds of them, literally hundreds. And so I go to Crunchyroll now and then to just catch some, that's where I watched most of Spy Family because they got the newer seasons on it. Really enjoyed that. Watched Free Ren on Crunchyroll and stuff. And so, and I've been watching Star Blazers Battleship Yamato remake on it as well.
Oh yeah, that's old school one.
I think
there's a more earlier remake, 2014.
The reason it's probably popular and easy, it's because you have your protagonist as the vessel that allows for the exploration of the new world. So you're not just dropped into a new world and having to learn all these new rules, or without some. It's like having what's it called? What's that character called, Litdev, when you bring a character along to have to explain everything to him so the audience understands?
Usually they call it a Watson, usually, where in Sherlock Holmes, Watson was there. Yeah, it was the character that served as the audience insert.
Yeah. So your main character becomes that, right?
Kind of.
And you have to explain to him.
Yeah.
Was it? There was another one. Oh yeah, Shield Hero. Have you seen Shield Hero?
No, but I've had it recommended to me a number of times.
Season 1 that one's good. The season 1 is really good because man, this guy goes through hell because it gets there. They summon the four great heroes, and then he's like, no one wants to pair with him. No one wants to go with him because he's the dumb shield hero and stupid, and he can't really attack or do anything. So he has to have someone attack for him to gain experience. And the first thing that happens is the princess accuses him of rape, and that defines the entire first season because everyone hates him and he's lowly and this is disgusting.
That one caused a bit of controversy, though not as much as Goblin Slayer before it, because people lost their brains at Goblin Slayer.
That was kind of crazy. Like they lost their minds over Goblin Slayer somehow more than Shield Hero, I think, because you think they would get upset more about the false rape thing, where she wanted to demonize him with a false rape accusation maliciously over this goblins being goblins kind of thing.
Yeah. And I actually made some videos on Shadiversity about Goblin Slayer because I found it interesting, the whole because monsters doing horrific things, and so the thing that really triggered people is that the goblins in in Goblin Slayer reproduce by raping humans. That's how they reproduce.
Yeah, they have to.
They don't have any females in their species, and like monsters have been doing that for a while in fantasy. It's even in Wheel of Time. The Murdrow do really nasty things to women, and even though they don't depict it, they reference it decently enough. But yeah, there is the first episode in Goblin Slayer. A new plucky band of adventurers tries to go into a goblin cave.
I think that's what was made it so jarring, is because it begins as like, oh, a bunch of young adventurers. It's very Disney-esque, very saccharine. And then they're like, oh, we're going to slay a dragon one day. It's going to be great. And then they get horrifically destroyed.
and that triggered so many people, because they like, it isn't hentai. They don't show stuff, but they show her face, and they clearly go pretty far in depicting the horror of what's going on, and that triggered so many people. But I did really find it really interesting that there was outcry about what happened to this poor girl, and it was terrible what happened to her. But the guy in their party literally got torn limb from limb, and no one shed a tear.
They hacked him to pieces, and the first thing they did was hold him down, and they chopped off his sword hand so they couldn't fight back and stuff. So,
it's like what they do to thieves in the Middle East, because you eat with your right hand and you poop, or you clean your butt with your left hand, so they chop off your right hand, and then you can't eat.
They chop off his hand, and then they hacked him to pieces.
Oh well, that's different.
Yeah. The memes that went around afterwards, where it's like people getting triggered. Have you seen that meme where it's like a puppet looking and he like looks nervous?
Oh yeah, that one.
Where I saw that, where it's like, people getting triggered at Goblin Slayer, and then I had that one, and it's like Berserk fans, and they're like,
yeah, Berserk fans. Like Goblin Slayer is nothing compared to Berserk.
I just know it by reputation, and it's like full on, right? Berserk goes really dark.
Guts gets like a mentor that raises him, and then that he like idolizes this mentor, and that mentor sells Guts to another guy for a night.
Yeah. I mean, it gets really dark, Berserk, and people are getting triggered over Goblin Slayer. It's like Berserk's been out for a while. I guess that went under their radar. Okay, so really get back, because there was controversy with that, and then I remember when Rising the Shield Hero came out, and people were getting triggered at that, but not as much as Goblin Slayer. But it's been on my radar. I've been aware of Rising the Shield Hero for a bit. Maybe I'll get around to watching it. But there's been a lot of these animes that have just continually come out, and there seems to be no stop. They're continually going, and there are some pretty stale, trends that have arisen out of it. But there are some funny, quirky, like takes on it that does it a little differently. And so, ever since Sword Art Online, it seems like just a slew of them have just continually come out. And one of the common ones now is the reincarnation trope, and I find this a bit lazy, in all honesty, unless they do it in like a quirky way. Because you mentioned like there was this one where my lit dev where he thought he saved someone, but it was a slow moving tractor, you said?
Yeah, that's Konosuba, which is a parody of Isekai.
See, that's funny. I find that funny. But the parody is like they die and get reincarnated in the fantasy world, and they give no explanation for it. And I find that lazy. It's like, come on, This week
up there, like it's a different, like just kind of, instead of going to heaven, you get to another world or something.
Lost.
Maybe.
Aren't they like a different island or something? I don't know. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, they're on the island and they don't know what it is. And there's a freaking polar bear that shows up in the first season and never shows up again.
Here's the thing with like Isekai and the common tropes. I think once or twice your first introduction is like, okay, that's kind of fun and quirky. Like, so you died, you reincarnated in this fantasy world. It's like a video game. Sometimes it's not. But I remember I don't know how I came across this manga, but it was basically exactly that. He reincarnated, and his power was poison, and it was a really weak power. And I don't even know the name of it. I've lost track of where it was, but he could just poison something, and he wakes up in this dungeon and is getting his butt kicked, but for some reason is able to poison and kill a really powerful dragon because it just was weak to poison. And that gave him huge amounts of experience points where he leveled up his poison skill crazy that now can kind of kill everything with just this weak old, attack that everyone ignored. And he becomes super OP. And it's interesting how many of the stale tropes it repeats in what is you can find commonly in isekai. But the thing is, though, this is one of my first times, I guess, reading one that had all those more stale tropes, and I was like, oh yeah, it's quirky enough. And I read it, and I didn't finish it because it came pretty, like, as soon as they become too OP, there's no stakes, and it's like you lose kind of interest in following it along.
Well, there was an interesting one that I was made aware of by my chat, which is called Reincarnation Coliseum.
I thought someone in the chat might know it. They're saying it's failure frame.
Well, failure frame is like it's not, I don't think it's reincarnation. They get swept away by goddess, and there's like the whole class is there, and so
that's right.
He's the weakest one. Like, he gets like the dumbest power, and then like they sort of send him to this dungeon to die, and then he's just able to poison everything. And that's kind of what happens. Paralyzed poison. I just he runs like the strongest guy as ever. He's like, paralyzed poison. Okay, you're dead. Paralyzed poison. There you go.
And look, I thought it was quirky and interesting. I read several chunks of it, but then it did kind of get okay. Now it's super overpowered. But maybe it's still good.
Reincarnation Coliseum might be interesting to some people because, first of all, it's very some people will find the erotic elements pretty intense, but it's not a porn, but it's like all the women have giant boobs and everything. But the thing is, it's about this kid who gets killed, this nerd, this gamer who gets killed, and he gets like the weakest move, which is copy. You can copy someone's ability, but it's always gonna be weaker. And it's only just you and another person fighting in this arena. And what was it? So he gets reincarnated. He's like a gamer. He's like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna. He always like thinks through everything though. Like every fight, he thinks it through. Like, okay, what can I do with this? How can I win against this person? It's like basically this almost like a detective story on how to like get the advantage to win the next time around. But one thing that might be interesting to some people is that he always fights girl bosses. Like they're all girl bosses, and he always wins. And once he defeats the girl bosses, they become his like slaves.
I was expecting that. It's one of those animes, right?
It's one of those.
Oh gosh. But like there are certain tropes in anime that they latch onto.
I also they after they win, they get like a bottle of aphrodisiac where they in a room for a week or something. And it's I don't know. It's like if the girls win, they get a potion that grows a dick. It's kind of strange. It's
okay. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Then.
Go back. Abort.
Too much anime. Too much anime.
Too much. This goes. Okay. Yeah, the anime can get very weird. So because I saw all this on Crunchyroll, I was like, all right, I don't want to risk my time on just slop. And it seems like a lot of it is just regurgitated slop, redoing the tropes. But some had interesting concepts. So I looked up a video, and it's this video of a guy looking at over 300 isekai anime and trying to rank them as from bad to good. And
how?
I don't know. I do not know. And that is like, I actually have trouble understanding. That is a lot of hours. And I've had a bit of trouble understanding those type of anime fans that'll just watch anything that's anime, where I was like, no, I need something good. I can't watch slop. If it's anime, doesn't mean it's, I can watch it. I need something decent. Though he shared some, but he was, sharing that ones that he thought was just crap and he didn't like. You still watch them though, and it's like over 300. It's like, holy crap! This it just hasn't slowed down. The isekai trend, and I think it goes back to it's a fun enough, interesting concept that people, I guess, connect with in the sense of it's a secondary fantasy thing where so that's always been fun. We've had it since the Chronicles of Narnia. The fantasy imagination sort of what would happen if you went into a fantasy world, and they get to explore a lot of different applications of that concept in anime in the isekai genre in weird, fun, quirky ways. Sometimes very generic. Other times they mix it up a bit. Like a popular one, I haven't watched it yet, but I've seen some like season summaries of it, and it's that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I don't think I'm going to watch it, but it's interesting. Where it's again, weak, and they use their slime powers to grow stronger, and then they end up becoming to the point where they can actually adopt a person's form, a human's form as a slime, and they get really powerful and all that stuff.
Have you seen Tanya the Evil?
I've heard of a lot now since watching that video that goes over 300 of them. So yes, I've heard of that one now.
He fights against God. He calls him like, "Oh, you can't be God because God doesn't exist. I'll call you Being X." And so he gets basically thrown into like World War I, but with magic. But he's a little girl and stuff. But he still has the same ruthless like ambition as the ambitious Japanese businessman.
That's the one where it's like it's based in World War II.
It's World War I because they're Germans, but they're not Nazis. They're not Nazis. But
yeah, so that was in the list, and that one was one of the ones that at least it's a little different. But one of the ones that actually caught my eye was saving 800 gold in another world for my retirement. I was like, okay, this one
very
is
relatable.
Yeah, well, I could relate to it because it's I've played around with that idea before, and it was quirky and different. Where it's not just like some guy getting super OP by using an exploit or weak power to strong power and other things like that. Where the concept behind this one is that she doesn't want to conquer the world, become superpower. She wants money, and the currency in the world, like people just like that's a gold coin, is worth $200 in our world because it's real gold, and so she's like. Oh,
it's a very small gold coin.
Yeah. She's like, I could actually do something with that. And she finds out that she can sell products from our world in the fantasy world and make lots of money. And there's a couple of things that I think they did in this that helped it out, overcome some of the stale, regurgitated tropes in the genre. They explain how she can get to that, and it's a really loose explanation. It's so she's about to die. She falls off a cliff, and she cries out in such terror that she somehow attracts an extra dimensional being and steals some of its powers, and that gives her the ability to jump between worlds. And she wakes up in this fantasy world, and she can actually jump back and forth. Now that's her own power, and she doesn't have any though she can use it in combat, and she ends up doing that in the end of the season, because she effectively can teleport now. But she's like a quirky, lighthearted character who is nothing particularly special. She's just a normal girl, but she is also a bit of a capitalist, and so she goes out of her way to find ways to make money. And I enjoyed it. I was like, okay, lighthearted. It's a little different, and I thought it was interesting enough and funny. And she did some things because
I know
I'm back. I clicked
there he is.
You were only gone for a glitch.
Just a glitch. But she did some things that if I was in the same situation, I would want to approach very cautiously. And and I'm glad that they actually put some brains to it, where it's like, okay, if I'm going to this fantasy world, I'm going to need to protect myself. That means I'm going to need to get guns and stuff. And then she ends up hiring like a private military group to train her, get her guns, and then she hires them and other things. It's fun. But I haven't seen some of the big popular ones. Like you mentioned a couple already, LitDev. ReZero, you mentioned?
Yeah, ReZero.
ReZero.
That's a big one because he doesn't actually have any powers. His main power is he comes back to life every time he dies. But it's kind of like a video game in terms of like he goes to a certain point and he's able to solve a certain event. And then if he manages to solve that, he's able to like go back a save. Like it kind of saves for him. And so he'll die again, but he'll wake up back at the beginning of like the other day or something. So
okay,
it gets really wacky and crazy in there. But everyone loves the twin maid ladies. Like they really obsess over them for some reason. Rem, I think that's the one they obsess over. Like that one specifically.
Okay. Well, one of the tropes that I kind of noticed, and that was a little bit present in this one as well, is the world building in these fantasy worlds seems pretty light. And I think that's letting the genre down a bit, because one of the, I guess, most important aspects for me in a fantasy story is having a fantasy world that feels alive, feels real. And some of these fantasy worlds are just, I actually don't mind generic if it's fleshed out and well done, well executed. I actually love a lot of the stereotypical fantasy tropes, dragons, elves, dwarves, core fantasy. But again, it needs to be done well, where a lot of these, isekai anime, it's just like throwaway fantasy world without much detail, and it's just there. And it lets it down a bit. I'm trying to like, can you think of any examples that does world building well? Like, because when I think about some of the old school stuff, right? Seven Kingdoms had actually from memory, it's been years since I watched it, but from memory, had really good world building. Because it was about the Seven Kingdoms, and so the Seven Kingdoms need to be defined. And one of the concepts that I really like when I think back to it, the sky in this fantasy world was literally an ocean. It was water in the sky, and you could travel up and then go through that ocean and then be on the top of that ocean. They reproduced by being born in eggs that grew on trees and other things like that. But it had some really interesting fantasy concepts that from memory was quite fleshed out. And that's one of like, if you're going to be doing like the concept of going into another world, that world is a character. It needs to be fleshed out and done really well. And it seems like in a lot of the isekai ones, they just kind of give it second regard. They don't flesh it out too much. Can you think of any ones that does it well? Litdev, like
a lot of times, I don't really remember their world building very much. More like closer to like basically the characters and the concept. Really, maybe ReZero does it because they have to go to different areas, and she's like the main lady is a contender for the throne. But I haven't seen too much of ReZero yet. Yeah,
see that comment I just said, where it's just kind of rinse and repeat. That's when it gets a bit lazy. There are some. Because then we can just look at how anime does fantasy generally, because that's the other trend that I've noticed is anime generally like have started to latch on to Western style fantasy more and more because they like it. Where back in the day, there were very few examples, but when they did it well, they did it really well. Primary example I'm going to show you here. I'm going to full screen myself for this one. Record of Lodos Wars. Do you guys know? Like,
oh yeah,
I remember that.
That's like the old school, like based on D&D campaign.
Yep. Record of Lodos Wars is based on D&D effectively. It's D&D anime, and it's friggin' great. Man. And but that was one of the very few ones that were around. Now anime is really latched onto it. And I think the popularity of D&D and other things that have, I guess, promoted even more. Now there are some animes back in the day where they try to do Western fantasy and it gets too animeified and it doesn't feel like authentic. And so Lena Inverse, is it Slayers? I think the anime is called Slayers and the character is Lena Inverse. What one?
Trigun?
Trigun's not classic. Oh, that's a Western, but it is very anime-fied.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about.
No, I'm talking about classic high fantasy.
You just mean like Western. Oh,
Western.
I meant Western.
No.
I meant Western without the quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Slayers is a classic, right? My only pet peeve is actually the artistic depiction of that world, where it's not a medieval world. Like Genry's sword, if that is his name, it's been ages, man. But it's one of the most crappy anime medieval swords. It's like, and the armor designs is like this weird, thing where it's not authentic medieval kind of inspired, and then they inject a lot of Japanese historical cultural things because I'm only speculating. It seems like they don't fully understand medieval history and the culture that this fantasy is wrapped up in. And so oftentimes, like, you will see an anime that's supposed to be like medieval fantasy, and then they'll take out these rice, balls and eat rice balls, or they're some of the buildings look too Japanese, and all the armor and weapons and stuff. But that was more of a symptom of the past where I saw a lot of that. And one of the ones that I can reference is Slayers, where they did that a decent amount, where it wasn't really like full blown, medieval kind of inspired. That seems to have been somewhat fixed, yet not entirely, where even in this one is a bit more medieval European, but not all the way. You have
the Delicious in Dungeon. That one's like very, very basic, like Western fantasy.
I really like Delicious in Dungeon.
It's really good.
I really do like that one. And by the way, that's a good example of one that has better world building, where they try and explain why dungeons are created, because spiritual energy gets basically trapped in a location, and that creates the dungeon with its own magic, and it starts to grow and kind of mold itself, and then monsters get attracted to live in them and stuff. And they talk about the different kingdoms as well. And so Delicious in Dungeon is a good example of one that latches onto D&D style fantasy pretty good, not perfect, but much better than other ones. And they depict a kind of D&D-esque fantasy quite decently. And then it's wrapped up in the quirkiness of them, finding monsters and eating them, which is also fun. What's another one that did all right with that? Goblin Slayer kind of did it all right. Again, they latch more onto the role-playing thing, because Goblin Slayer, if you actually look at some of the manga, it's basically a D&D campaign. They're D&D characters. And Goblin Slayer is a character that is like min-maxing kind of certain areas, and then they'd say the gods are against them, and it's actually referencing the dungeon master. And
they have the show dice or something. Like, the gods against it. It means it got a low roll.
Yeah, they show the dice in it. And one of the things that actually worked really well in Goblin Slayer, which is what I like about that series, is that he uses tactics outside of the box, like spells that you aren't really supposed to be used that way to defeat really powerful, enemies. And so it's a minor spoiler, but it's just an example of what he does to defeat a really powerful boss, where he gets a gate spell. You get someone to create which is just a portal spell, opens a gate to another location, but he gets them to open the other end of the gate at the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean. And so what happens then, or it's got this powerful enemy, he casts the gate spell, opens up a portal, and the insane water pressure from that deep in the ocean creates this jet of water that blasts the monster in half. And I'm like, I can appreciate that type of autism where it's like,
it was an invincible monster too. Like they couldn't beat it. It was impossible. And you just whipped it out, like just cut him into like 100 pieces. It was pretty good.
I loved it. And Goblin Slayer actually has a good number of those kind of think outside the box tactics where you take traditional fantasy plot devices, spells or things that are used around, and he uses them in clever different applications to achieve much greater results. And it's clever, and I enjoyed it as a result.
What I liked about the Goblin Slayer also is that they do have like a main character there, a main character group where they're all fighting the Demon Lord and stuff. And the Demon Lord rises and falls like off screen.
See, we're
because it's not important.
Yeah, we're talking about general anime fantasy now because related to Isekai, because I wanted to list some examples of when they do the world building much better and it's more enjoyable because the world feels more immersive and there's actual mechanics that they can play with. Where in a lot of Isekai, it's just like generic fantasy world. And this one here is a pretty good example of it's very generic. In actual fact, I had no idea if there was monsters in the world for the first half of the season, if magic exists in the world, because he doesn't come across any of it. And it was just like, is this a medieval? And so she mentions like you don't understand the kingdom or other things like that. And so that was a weaker part of the series a bit, even though other parts of the world felt a little bit better. Like they have currency and they go into, what's valuable and what's not, and the availability of certain products. Like there's a part in the series where she serves fish in a kingdom, and it's in the middle of the kingdom, and people like gobsmacked, like, what the heck? Because they're like several days travel from the ocean, and to serve fresh fish where she is insane to them. And they're like, it's not smoked, it's not preserved, it's fresh. What the hell? And they go crazy because she just brought it from our world, and it was like
witchcraft.
They actually think she's a witch at times and stuff. And so that level of attention to detail, I really like. I just wish they would apply it a bit more broadly across the thing. They do show a map towards the end of the series. But yeah, I think one of the things that lets down a lot of the Isekai is the world building. Some does it better, some do it worse. Then I also think they need to better explain how they I died and got reincarnated, and then they're in this fantasy state. And they give no explanation. It's like, I know it's just, they're trying to move past it because they want to get into the fun of the story. But it's just, sometimes it just jars me. It's like, okay, you're reincarnated as a slime. But in any case, it doesn't seem to be slowing down. heaps of it is getting flooded, and so I'm interested in checking out some of these other ones that people have mentioned that are okay, because it's a fun enough series.
People like it. People like it a lot.
Yeah, people really do like it. There's a lot of copycat stuff being made. I wonder, like, if it'll,
isn't like Final Fantasy X? Isn't that technically an isekai as well? Because he's like in the modern world, and then he wakes up in like this spira, and then like there's some dreaming crap that happens. I don't know, but most of that game feels like an isekai.
Yeah, and chat mentions the reincarnation plot is unknown because it has some plot relevance later. Well, that would be good if they kind of explain it, because sometimes they do. Sometimes it's like a goddess that summons, like I mentioned that other one, and I forgot that this was how they got in that world. The goddess summons like people from our world to become adventurers, and she summons like a whole.
You think Total Recall counts?
So I'm trying to remember Total Recall. That's the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He gets head plugged in, and then he thinks he's on Mars.
Can't remember enough of it. It's been ages since I watched that one.
Or he has all these memories. No, I guess it would.
But I think I would recommend saving 80,000 gold in another world. It's mostly wholesome. It's quirky. My daughter loved it. She saw me just watching it, and so she wanted, and then she binged the whole thing, and she really enjoyed it. And I was happy that all right, they're trying different things. It's not just some guy with a weird power becoming OP. Another one that I haven't watched that I'm interested in, I think it's called something along the lines that Timer got reincarnated as a fantasy sword.
I've heard of that one, but I have no idea what it's about.
Japanese, man.
There's another one where the guy gets reincarnated as a vending machine.
What the hell, man? But the sword one, the reason why it interests me, it's playing. Oh, look, people are already recommending. They say, I reincarnated as a sword, right?
Did you write that one, Shad? I feel like you wrote that one.
I don't. But it's playing on the trope of the magical sword that can talk. That's actually a fantasy kind of trope that's been around for a little bit. And it's like, okay, an actual person gets reincarnated as one of these magical swords. And I'm like, that one is interesting. I haven't watched it, but I've seen like a season breakdown, and this weak character gets a hold of it. And she uses the sword and levels up, and he like helps her out and stuff. And it's like, okay, maybe that one might be interesting, but I want to wait until some more seasons are out and see if it goes anywhere. But that, like, as I mentioned, Isekai has been a bit on my mind lately, just because there's a boom of it. It's like I said, I've watched over 300 of them. People are recommending. They're saying the sword one is good. It's like, okay, I might check that one out on my next one. It's fun when they explore these different, like, magical sword, but a person this time. Do you think it is gonna like burn itself out, or they're just gonna get more wacky? And they're gonna keep going?
Well, it's there's so much stuff you can do with it. It's like there's a typical isekai where it's like, oh, loser goes from Japan to another world, big boobed elf girl, and then he gets powers and everything. But there's also different versions of it where he's not OP. He has like no one likes him. He has like a small little power, or he's a hero, or there's a whole thing about the villainous subgenre where it's like actually not a guy at all. It's a girl, and she gets reincarnated into this romance game, and sometimes she doesn't even want the romance. Like there's one where I think it's called like, I'm level 9. I got reincarnated as a villainess. I'm level 99. I might be a secret boss, but I'm not the demon lord, something like that. Where she's just kind of like, she just wants to fight monsters, and she doesn't really want to do any of that other school romance stuff. And there's another one where it's like, I'm in love with the villainess, where it's like it's all lesbians, but the main character is like she's the heroine, but she's not in love with any of the princes, the main men. She's in love with the villainous.
Yeah. We will get to the super chats. I just want to mention, because someone was worried we missed the super chat. Yeah. We will get covering all the super chats.
I think it covers so many genres that it's not actually a genre itself. I think it's more of a trope.
Yeah,
we're in 100 different genres.
It seems like, because like they've even done ones where people get reincarnated or find themselves in a dating simulator game, and they either love it or hate it, and they can't stand all these people trying to hit on them and other things like that. And there's all these quirky different adaptations or ways to do it, and some genuinely do, like, you know, get my interest. I'm like, okay, I just, and then, you know, they
Mario
they
Brothers.
pull it off.
I'm sorry, I'm just not now.
Mario Brothers is one, because it's wrong to just it's wrong to think that this is just an anime trope. This is a trope that goes back way back in many genres, but anime have really latched onto it, and they are pumping these stories out. Like,
well, that's because there's 300 of these, but there's 3 million of all the other ones.
Yeah,
so many.
Like, Litdev, I'm having trouble wrapping my head. You said that there's one where they got reincarnated as a vending machine.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read that one, but there is a one where he gets reincarnated as a vending machine.
I got reincarnated as a merkin.
Oh my gosh! So they can, I guess, milk that to the end. If they can do a vending machine, they can do anything. I wonder what if you got reincarnated as a pen or reincarnated. I'm not sure I have much interest in those, but the reincarnated as a sword one actually has my interest, because I'm like, okay, I like swords, and it's like intelligent fantasy talking magic sword. It's like, okay, I'll give that one a go. People are saying it's good. We'll see. But I like, part of me kind of likes it because I love fantasy, but I want fantasy done well. And so the lazy ones do annoy me, but then you find these ones that are actually pretty decent still. And animes just keep popping out. It's like, all right, if it's good, I might keep giving it a look. It's been fun to watch, though, the trend. We'll grab some of these super chats now, and there are some other news topics that we can discuss. Patrick Els for $20 says, if there's any isekai that you would say is underappreciated, it would be Ascendance of a Bookworm. Once I have my channel up and I review Shadow the Conqueror, awesome, I think I'll review that light novel series. Okay, have you heard of that one, Litdev? Ascendance of a Bookworm.
I have heard of it. I was recommended to me. I heard it was really good. It's like I heard it was about like a girl who's like really, really, really smart, but she's trapped in a tower and has like no connection to the outside world. And the main guy is kind of like trying to teach her how to be human or something. It's kind of like that, but I haven't actually seen it.
It's just fun, like you know, again, using like her bookworm skills probably to get ahead. I think the other thing that people are kind of appreciating about the genre is that in some instances it just very average people, and it enables them to do that kind of imprinting on themselves on the main character, like, oh, that could be me, kind of, and they get that secondhand kind of fantasy experience of, you know, going into another world. Because like I said, I've literally role played this concept before, and it was just like, okay, and you know, she did similar things that I did and stuff. It's like, yeah, people had it's just blowing up, or has blown up for over the past few years. Not banned account for 199 says, hope to be isekai'd to escape Trump's fascism. Move to Canada, is that like? But I don't think.
Well, have you ever played at the South Park game? Going to Canada is like going to like an isekai world. Like over there, it's like all medieval. Like,
yeah, you know,
it's like a storybooks fairy tale world.
It's a bit dystopian. They got the assisted suicides there and no free speech. And, you know, like, oh, you could come to Australia. We got the fantasy beasts over here that you have to battle and fight for your lives. So there's that. You can have an isekai experience by just traveling. To Tim 505 for $2 says Konosuba is the best one. I haven't heard it. There's so many. Have you heard of that one, Dev? I'm not even bothering asking Mike because
that's what I mentioned earlier, where like he thought he got killed by the truck, but the guy got scared to death, and the goddess is like, oh, but the what's really funny about that one is that the goddess is laughing at him, like, oh, you're so pathetic. Everyone laughed at you, your family laughed at you, and then she's like, I can give you one thing to let you go into the new world with. And he's like, I want you, and then it works. Like she gets forced to go with him into the
new world. That's Konosuba. That one does sound funny. Patrick Els for $5 says, perhaps one of the oldest examples of isekai could be Alice in Wonderland. In anime, it could be for Shugi Yugi. Yeah. Alice in Wonderland. How old is that? Is that older than Gulliver's Travels? I'm not sure.
I thought it was like
I don't think
1800s.
so.
No,
What
I don't
about
think
like?
so.
Wow, you could go. Is Journey to the Center of the Earth like is that a type of isekai? Like,
Isn't that Wells?
that's Wells, I think. Yeah, you can go back to some old school stuff. Fushigi Yugi, I would need to look up when that was made because that's old school. And so it's a girl that gets transported into a fantasy world. Her best friend comes with her and she becomes almost like an antagonist throughout it all. And 5 different guys end up vying for her affection. And it's like a very female kind of anime love story thing where, yeah. But there are quirky things in it that are from memory. It was a while since I watched that one. Got recommended to me from my neighbor saying it's really good. It's like, all right, I'll give it a go. And that's when I was willing to just watch anime if it was anime because it was a lot rarer and harder to find back then.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland was published in 1865, so it's not older.
Okay. But yeah, when I grew up, anime was hard to get a hold of. I rarely did it air on TV. And I remember when Neon Genesis Evangelion aired on TV, that was a big deal because I was 14 years old. The main characters were 14 years old. And so I was like, oh, 14-year-old kids piling giant mecha robots. Awesome. Then when it got to the weird stuff, I didn't really understand what the hell was going on in Neon Genesis. But I was there for it as a kid because I was like, giant robots fighting. And only rarely did some, oh man. Again, it was so hard to find, but Techno Man. That aired when on TV when I was in primary school, and I friggin' loved it. I'm not sure if many people know of Techno Man. Techno Man is going so. Techno Man Blade.
I know what the oldest one is.
What's the oldest one?
The Book of Revelation. John travels.
Does he? I don't know.
The future and witnesses the end days. And is told to write it in a book. Boom. Mic drop.
Neon Genesis was an interesting one because it was more mature and you know, like very few mature cartoons were ever, you know, around. And so that also attracted my teenage self a lot. But it wasn't to say that I didn't like that was when anime as a concept was starting to become more solidified in my people around me, because I watched anime before that without knowing it was anime. Techno Man is one of those ones. And I wonder if people know of Techno Man. Yes, some do. Techno Man Blade. So the initial Western release of Techno Man was heavily edited in the dub to make him into like a superhero. And the original Japanese had some nudity in it, and they edited that out. And one of the most hilarious edits in it, Techno Man Blade has a cross-dresser in it. And this guy is a cross-dresser constantly hitting on the main character and he's not into it. They change that character into a female that's just hitting on the main character that is not into. That looks a little masculine.
I see they were very based back then.
They were very based. This is funny, but the thing that just floored me with Techno Man, like the animation is actually so they have like more cheap animation through a lot of their, you know, series, but in the like critical story moments, the animation gets kicked up to like almost Akira levels at sometimes. Like the animation gets really good in some moments and it just blew me away. And the transformation sequence in Techno Man, go look it up. Go look up Techno Man Blade transformation sequence. It friggin' rocks, dude. It's so cool. I loved that. That was like a drug for me as a kid. And then, of course, you know, there were other. I loved Astro Boy as a younger kid. That was on some reruns. But outside of that, it was really hard to find, and it really came up in the you know, we didn't have Blockbuster Video, but we, you know, the video hire places. Our one was like Future Flicks and Magnum Video. And they only had some anime there, but not a lot. And so when I could get my hands on a new anime, I would watch it just because it was anime, because it was, and so Fushigi Yugi was one of those ones. And it was, I distinctly remember, this is a bit harder to get through, but it's anime, so I'm watching it. So I have watched all of Fushigi Yugi. It's a longer one, and it's old. I need to look up when that one came out. Dragon Ball Z came out on TV, of course, over here, and I gobbled that.
I showed you guys this.
Oh, nice. Akira.
I bought this at the movie theater in 1989. When it came out, when the movie theater was playing it, and I used to wear it like all the time, regularly, up until I went on eBay and found out it goes for like $1,000. So now I don't wear it anymore. I should sell this.
Run My Half I didn't find until late teens in high school, and so because I had a friend that was like anime brained as well, and we only really became friends because we had that common interest in anime. He wasn't really that nice of a guy, in all honesty, but we bonded through our appreciation of anime, and he knew of Run My Half, and he told me about Run My Half, about all these, and just because he learned about it through reputation. And I only got my hands on it when I actually went to Japan when I was like 18 or 19. But it was hilarious, funny as anything.
There's another one. A friend of mine and I used to watch when we were kids. It was called Magical Shopping Arcade at Binabashi, and that one is like several different isekai.
Say that slower.
Magical Shopping Arcade at Binabashi. It's like it's kind of like, it's funny, but it's also very dramatic because the isekai worlds only begin based on some like mythical energies of like Japanese lore or something, but really the isekai part only begins after the grandpa like dies and like in a tragic accident. And so like we find out that the reason why they go into all these worlds is they're based on his interests. So you have like one that's a world about like going into like kung fu fighting movies, and there's like a whole world about where he's at this high school full of like girls who are in love with him and stuff. And it's like there's one space battles or whatever, and they find out like, wait, this is all in what you're interested in, and basically it's a big cope as to why, as to him escaping this reality where his grandpa is dead and was killed and everything. And there's a famous clip that gets passed around from that show where they go to the America version of everyone, where the America world, where like they run to one of their friends, because every single one of them is like Wizard of Oz. It's kind of like all their friends are there, but they fit into the world. So so the one they come to is the American one, and that's kind of the clip that flows around because like, hey, no fucking cowgirl, fucking cowboy, they want a fucking hot dog with a lot of fucking ketchup, a lot of fucking mustard, and they give like a free gun and stuff like that. But it's really funny because like America is like mustard, hot dogs, guns, and the word fuck, and that's
there we go. It's just funny seeing the chats mentioning some of their first anime that they came across. Technically, mine would have to be like Astro Boy or Speed Racer.
Speed Racer is my first anime. I like that one. That was good.
Old school, man.
He's a psycho. Like that guy was. If you look back, that guy was insane.
It's been too long.
Have you guys watched Promised Neverland?
No, I don't know.
It's someone mentioned it in the chat. Laughing Cavalier. The first season was freaking awesome, and they just the second season. It's like they tried to rush the entire rest of the manga into one season, and it was horrible.
Yeah, like, so I was too young for like Akira or Ninja Scroll or stuff like that. There was some ones like at my video hire store, they got random anime now and then, but that's how I discovered Rurouni Kenshin, because they had Samurai X there. And I hired Samurai X, which is the OVA film of Rurouni Kenshin, and it was friggin' amazing. And
that's really good.
Yeah, that got me looking it up, and then I was able to order the DVDs of Rurouni Kenshin, the whole series, and it's been one of my favorite ever since.
Did you watch the live action?
Watched the first movie, really enjoyed it, and I can't find who's streaming them all at the moment, and so I haven't finished all the live actions. Yeah, like Netflix, like they helped fund the final film, I think, and I had the final film on there. I've heard good reports of it, but I want to rewatch the first one, and I can't find who's streaming it at the moment.
Look around at his age. He says, I used to run home to catch Speed Racer after school.
Yeah, that is.
Dude, I was like 4 when Speed Racer was on.
Speed Racer's classic. I remember watching it, and it's just that cool car.
It showed me reruns of that. It was reruns of like Cartoon Network or something like that. It was crazy. He was killing all these guys. Like, I don't care. I want to win this race. I gotta win this race.
You gotta. I don't remember much, but I remember him being willing to punch people really quickly, and they'd get into these big fist fights a lot in the show.
And kill people, shoot them down with guns, and there's like race Speed. This guy needs to win. Let him win so he can get the money to save his sister's life. Like, fuck you! I'm winning this race. He wants to win. He can beat me fair and square.
I don't remember, man. It goes so long, so long. But old school anime was fun. And then when it started to catch on, it started to become more prominent, like when Cartoon Network started to show some of it, and we got that through our, our type of cable in Australia, cable TV, which was more satellite TV called Ozstar. And then they showed Gundam Wing. And I remember enjoying Gundam Wing, and they would get like anime on their Toonami section pretty regularly.
Gundam Wing had the classic like Padme syndrome with love, what's her name, Peacecraft, where she's like he threatens her to kill her, and then the guy that drives Death Scythe like gets in the way before he shoots her, before I think what's named Hero shoots her, and then she like chastises the other guy for saving her life. Like, don't hurt him. He almost shot her with a gun. He's like, no, don't hurt him.
Yeah, Gundam Wing is funny because the girl character is like, Hero, come and kill me. You're supposed to kill
hurry up and kill me.
Hurry up and kill me.
It's like the boy band Gundam. That's how I know it.
It is actually, which is kind of funny. Classic good old days, hey. Now it's just anime is just everywhere and really easy to get a hold of. It's just because streaming, you can get a hold of it, like everything. But then there's the odd one that you can't find, which is kind of annoying because like people recommended to me Outlaw Star, and I couldn't in Australia. There's no streaming service that had it, and then I found it on YouTube of all places. So
that was my favorite. I really liked Outlaw Star. And that one's like a really good like a exploration into like masculinity and like what drives young men to the stars and everything, because they always have like a little monologue before each episode. Like it's really cool stuff.
I've heard good things of it, so I watched the first couple of episodes. And, hey, they're all right. Maybe I'll finish it off.
They had like they like just like the other classic anime. They have like a stuff that would be considered woke like a little bit. They have Fred Lowe, who's like a weapons dealer, but he's like obviously gay for Gene Starman, but he's not into it.
Well, I wonder if I'm too affected by nostalgia goggles. So, like, Litdev, have you ever watched Techno Man?
No, I don't think so.
I want people to watch Techno Man and tell me what they think. If it's just me with nostalgia goggles because I was a kid and it looked so cool in the animation, but I have such fond memories of Techno Man, it's like very few people know of it, and it was one of the most engrossing cartoons I watched as a kid. I would go outside and play Techno Man because he has this cool transformation sequence where he gets this crystal and he holds it above his head and goes, well, in the dub, he goes Techno Power, but in the original anime, he goes Tech Seta, but he turns it to Techno Man, and it was a
I do like
adrenaline
the Techno Power
stuff.
thing. Techno Power.
No power. And the transformation sequence was just rocking, man. it rocked. And so funny thing, right? So I only watched it on the dub, and that was it. And then it's left TV, never heard anything about it again. And so when I was a teenager, I went on a quest to try and find the DVDs, and it was really hard to find. And I found this shop in a place near the city that was just Japanese import shop. It took me ages. And so I got them to import the Techno Man DVDs that were multilingual, and I had a dub. And the thing is, though, something happened before I got the DVDs. There was a sequel series of Techno Man made, and I remember finding it on VHS in a some store or something like that. I'm like, yes, Techno Man sequel! I can't believe it's a sequel. I can't get it right. So in the sequel, it has a lot more nudity, and I had no idea. And I was at my cousin's house, and I was like, "You should watch this. This is so cool!" I put it on, and I sit down with my cousins. And
like you're right, Shad. Is
two thumbs up. Where a girl transforms. I'm like, "What the heck? Don't look!
And your cousin gives you 2 thumbs up. Oh, you're correct, Shad. That was a pretty good choice.
And so I had no idea that it got that mature. But then when I got the DVDs, which was still, it was the dub, but it was the unedited dub, and there are some brief moments of nudity in the original that also surprised me. Nowhere near as heavy as the sequel. The sequel got real far in the transformations. I was like, okay.
Oh, man, that's like going back and trying to show your kids like 80s movies where you didn't think there was anything in it because all you ever did was see it on TV.
Yes.
And then like you're watching it and you're like,
this is not what I remember.
He said that word. I thought he said. I thought he just said "yippee ki mother lovers." I didn't say. But isn't that kind of like what happens in The Princess Bride, the book, where it's like the guy tells you about how he loved this book, The Princess Bride, and how his grandpa used to read it to him, and so he gave it to his son, and his son's like, it sucks, and he's like, wait, what? And that's where he learned like, oh, it's like this weird political like commentary book that my grandpa just took out all the boring crap and gave me the good story.
Oh man, yeah, the experiences you have watching anime growing up, and yeah, it's just things happen sometimes that you're not aware of. Patrick Elf $5 says, okay, I think we covered that one. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland, in anime for Shugi Yugi. Grey Spirit 4 for 6 MYR says, here's an isekai, Tanya the Evil. Yeah, we've mentioned that. That's the one where he gets reincarnated as this little girl and is psycho evil and he starts leading an army or something. That was on the like video that covered so many of the lists.
How about the Little Mermaid?
Nah, it's adjacent. I would give it that, but I wouldn't call it. Patrick Elf for $50. Dude, thank you for dropping them. I appreciate it. He says his absolute favorite isekai is A Sentence of a Bookworm. That has been mentioned already, yeah. And it's very different from the usual story in that genre where the main character is very weak until the cause of her new body's frailty is revealed and she needs to rely on her knowledge to improve. I do like that when characters like they have to work through their limitations. It becomes more interesting, far more interesting when they're too overpowered. And I kind of like, when I was that one with this poison got a little bit more boring when he became so OP. He's like, yeah, you can paralyze and poison everything and just win. And it's like, it was fun to begin with, but you need something to mix it up. But dude, thank you for the big 50 super chat. Appreciate it, man. Filler Quasipuzzle 545. I butchered that, but that's what you get for $1.99. Appreciate you. Says Dead Mount Death Play is an amazing reverse isekai. Reverse isekais are kind of fun. Holy crap, I just remembered there's kind of like an isekai / reverse isekai. That was a TV show that aired, and it's an Australian made one. Spellbinders. Holy crap. Let me know in chat if anyone knows of Spellbinders, the old ABC live action TV show. It's an adaptation of a novel series. It's about a guy that literally like gets accidentally transported into a fantasy world. And then he meets a girl and they go on adventures in this fantasy world, but then she comes into his world in one of the later seasons. Spellbinders. Yeah, that's a deep cut. Very few people know it, but some do. That is actually full-on isekai, but it's a kid's TV show. Gosh, yeah, I haven't thought about that one in age. Yeah, I know the original Techno Man is Tekka Man Blade, and it's actually a remake of an even older anime, Tekka Man. It's just called Tekka Man, and the remake is Tekka Man Blade. But wow, I haven't thought of Spellbinders in ages, but I actually really enjoyed that show as a kid. Man, I've been into isekai for freaking ages. Oh, gosh. That's taking me back. Because that is isekai and reverse isekai. So reverse isekai is fun when, someone from a fantasy world coming into our world. Michael Dunave, I'm butchering his name again. Sorry.
He says it right there. It's Dunave.
Thanks, Dunave.
Dunaya.
With a big 50. Thank you, dude. Says,
Dunaya.
I'm going to try. Sorry, Michael Danaev. Do you think one medium is better for isekai? I lean towards live action over animation because the jump from the real world into fantasy one feels more stark. Labyrinth and Pan's Labyrinth are among my favorites. Cheers. Labyrinth is, total isekai. That's a great one. I want to add that to the list as well. Like, this is actually an old genre that we don't see as common, except in an anime is just, like I said, latched onto it and just pumping stuff out. But it's a trope, style, story concept that, like Labyrinth is a great classic one. And I remember watching that as a kid and getting freaked out because those puppets were a bit too real at times.
And it was good. I really loved the Labyrinth. I even know how to no contact juggle. I can do that stuff.
Oh, can you? I just like,
it's pretty fun.
I remember as a kid being freaked out about it. And you know, the other, like, what was the other one that freaked me out? Oh, the Dark Crystal. That one.
Dark Crystal is awesome. Also, that one's really good as well.
Yeah.
That one was way more violent. It had like blood and like people dying horribly.
Puppets dying.
I think it's the puppets that freaked me out as a kid. I still enjoyed them.
Gelflings freaked me out, dude.
Also, the little creatures that raise the girl Gelfling that kind of get their life sapped from them and turn into like youth potions or something.
Yeah.
That was pretty creepy.
What's the is it the Storyteller? So there's an old like series, Storyteller or something like that. Tales from the Story. It's the guy who's the storyteller in it. He's the old guy that gives Harry Potter his wand in the Harry Potter movie, and he's the storyteller or something like that. I remember there was some episodes of that freaked me out. Because there's like, I don't know. It's too long ago for me to. The Page Master. I think that's it, man. Chat is on fire. They remember this stuff.
That's one of my favorites. Like, people said they hated it, but I love that movie.
Yeah, is that a movie or a series? I can't remember.
I saw the movie, the Page Master, and it's got what's his name? Doc Brown was the librarian.
Okay. All I remember from is like there was this long beaked puppet that someone was trying to feed it like these strips of something. And I remember it trying to eat it in a puppet, and it looked weird and freaky.
The Muppet Show. Every episode they have a human guest in a puppet world.
Oh, there we go. Oh man. But thank you, Michael Dunev. Appreciate you. Jason Voorhees for $5 says, Shad, have you watched Louis the Rune Soldier? I have not. It's the same world as Record of Lotus. Okay. It's about a mage who mostly fights with his fists. I'm aware that there are some sequels of Lodos Wars. I think I even have a manga of the sequel. Check it. I do. Where it's a different character, and the chronology gets a little weird in this one, where it like picks up halfway through first record of Lodos Wars or something like that. It's a little tricky. Maybe I should just reread it because good art in this one. It's got good art style. But I remember trying to watch one of the other sequels of Record of Lodos Wars, and the design of the world just completely changed, and I didn't like it. It's like Record of Lotus World has a really good, consistent fantasy aesthetic that I really liked, and then the animation changed a bit in the sequel. And so I wonder if that's the one you're referring to. Maybe I just need to revisit it though. This is going back a long time. But thank you for the super chat. Jam Cal X for $20 says, Knights and Magic is a computer engineer and mecha nerd is reborn to a world like Dunbine and Escaflowne. Hey, his passionate breakthroughs in Magitech and mecha development trigger an arms race. That one sounds fun as well.
It's an aspect I liked about Atlas Star because unlike Cowboy Bebop, it also had magic in there. So it was like a mix between sci-fi elements. Like it's kind of like Star Trek, and I guess where you can have like swords and stuff and too. But like I like Outlaw Star where you had these you had caster shell bullets where he could bought like bullets that could like shoot magic or something. It was pretty awesome. And he had space pirates.
Because I've only watched the first episode of Outlaw Star, and he's got these distinct bullets, and he's like number 13 or something like that. But then they're
looking for him.
Yeah, and then he's fighting those priests, and they're actually using magic. You're right. So
they look pack with something, and they just shoot magic at you. It was pretty. I thought that was awesome because like just space pirates have all this magic, and then you have like these. You have like assassin like Twilight Suzuka who kills you with a wooden sword, and you have all these aliens in there. I thought it was pretty cool.
Cool. See, there are so many, and there's nice magic ones there, and I kind of like that aspect. When people use the knowledge of the real world in the fantasy world to their advantage, because it's funny. Our real world is like a more crazy fantasy world to some of these other worlds that they go to in terms of our technology and the way we live. It's fun. Keenan Metzger for $2 says, you should read or watch Dan Machi Hero Themes. Alrighty. The list is getting too big. I do appreciate the recommendations. Paul Dang for $10 says, Vision of Escaflowne is one of the great isekais. High school crew gets transported to another world, medieval fantasy with mechas, great world building as well. So here's the thing that I'm familiar with Escaflowne. Haven't watched the series, but have watched the movie. In fact, I own the OV, which is, I condensed the whole story, but the animation is amazing in it. The Escaflowne OV, I think it's an OVA, but it's an animated film of the series. Really cool. Really cool. And it's like fantasy mecha robots. I love it. So, but that is a classic one. People, that one goes.
Escaflowne is all because Escaflowne 2 is like almost like a medieval style world, feudal kind of world, but with robots. It's pretty cool.
Giant mecha robots with swords and things. Yeah, like that is just an awesome concept. I love it. Wolfsbane for $2 says, G Gundam was mine. MC blocked bullets with his fists. Man, I want to watch another Gundam series, and there are so many. And I want to just find out, like, well, all right, what's the best one that people really like? And then I'm probably gonna go back and watch that because there's heaps of Gundam. Too many for me to watch for the time I got. Alex Halo for $2 says Digimon is one of the best isekais. I never watched it, but I've heard it's.
Oh, that's right. It technically is.
So it is an isekai.
Yeah, because the kids, they all as a class, they'll get swept off into the Digimon world, and they kind of have to spend a lot of at least the first season or so trying to get back to the real world.
Okay, all right. Well, that is isekai. There we go. I always saw it as like, well, they're trying to copy Pokemon, but people have liked it. Jogs and Vohies for $2 says, Unbelievable Gwenpool is a Marvel isekai story. Is it? I don't know much about Gwenpool. I know of her, of course, but I don't know.
I think the canonical storyline of Gwenpool is that she's like killing people inside the comic book world because she's from the real world and doesn't see them as real, and then eventually she sees them as real.
Okay. There we go. Then maybe. So we're up to date on the super chats at the moment, and that's a lot of the isekai discussion all through. Oh man, it's fun. But there are a couple of just small news items we could quickly mention just before we sign off because stuff has happened in the week. Have you seen how well the box office is for Captain America: Brave New World?
No,
I heard it exploded and like it did really well at the beginning, and then it kind of just died immediately.
The fall off is pretty big. So Captain
how well did it do first weekend?
Not that good. Like they were comparing it to like Multiverse of Madness, and I don't think it beat that. And so it is not doing good. And this is just Marvel. You get what you deserve.
Yeah. Rob Liefeld said something about it. He said, like, I can't believe a Captain America movie isn't doing as well as whatever Doctor Strange or whatever. And he like was wondering why. And I put because Captain America's not in it.
Yeah, I know. Marvel just they're not smart at the moment. It's like, really, what did you expect? What did you expect? It's a Captain America movie without Captain America, and so the drop off is massive, and it is not doing well. So I find that interesting. And I consider my feelings sort of changed a bit. Where out of the cinema, I thought you could just call it barely above average, but it's actually a pretty bad film, and only parts in it would I call barely above average that I was able to enjoy. And so I can still say there are parts in it that I was able to enjoy, but the film is pretty darn bad. And that is not the type of film that is going to have any hope of success, especially with where Marvel is at the moment.
That's a combination of factors, though. I think really the Avengers Endgame, the whole Avengers, both of the Avengers movie kind of sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And then I noticed it at conventions, like sales got cut in half like from one year to the next. It was like people were like, we're done.
But here's the thing.
And you combine that with like, that's when they really started ramping up all the DEI bullcrap. And then all the diehard guys who would have gone are like, we're done, you know? So it's like,
I wonder, like, there are signs that if Marvel made something genuinely good with the classic characters that people love, the fans would still show up for it. The example recently is Marvel Rivals. That's the recent example where you make something good with characters that I like, they still show up. But in terms of the cinema, I'm not sure that might play out with this because you would have to have a series of really good movies. And a lot of people, I don't think, would go out to the cinemas and watch it, but might, if they told it's good after the fact, watch it. It's like, okay, that's actually good. That might begin to restore some confidence and benefit of doubt to go to the cinemas again.
But I think the whole Marvel thing was a cycle, right? And because it was all building up to the Avengers, it was all the movies were building up to Avengers from Iron Man 1, right? And then you got to that point. What you have to do if you want to you can't maintain that level. I mean, it got Captain Marvel of all movies to be $1 billion movie.
$1 billion film,
right? Because of that,
could have.
It was all that momentum. But you have to start over again and
maybe
rebuild.
I like they lost so much momentum after Endgame. Endgame was the peak. It did crazy.
That's what I'm saying.
Every single Marvel fan was ready to show up to the next MCU film, no matter what it was, and then they just fell off a cliff. Everything sucked because they had the perfect opening to introduce the X-Men after Endgame. If they just said that Thanos snap, and Rocket Raccoon mentions that energy kind of swept over the globe, right? And pinged Earth. They could have easily just made that as the trigger to cause the mutations that Ray brought.
They had the perfect moment here, not only to introduce a new Wolverine, but to also bring it back to from the existing cast to reboot, bring in the X-Men, do Hulk 181 as a movie, right? Introduce Wolverine into this universe, bring Hulk back to who he is, not Professor Hulk, right? And you have you can play that entire scenario with the old universe and then bringing in the X-Men, merging it all, and then starting. That would have been such a perfect starting point to start the next cycle.
Yeah.
Instead, Miss Marvel, let's do this.
Oh my gosh!
After Endgame, they kind of meandered for a while, trying to find their footing, and that's kind of why it's called this really fell off.
They had Stinker.
I'm telling you before, it was so in because I was in the convention cycle. That was my job during that time. It was literally from Endgame to the next year, and they hadn't had time to put out a bunch of crappy meandering stuff. Sales plummeted. Like the desire to go see Marvel movies was just gone. The audience just took a breath, and they're just like, this is the crescendo we were waiting for, and now we don't care. Dude, I was there. I was on the ground.
But if they kept
everybody I knew at the con were like, sales are down by half.
All right, here's my perspective on it. I think because the superhero genre has already proved itself to be a timeless fan base, where I will consume superhero content my whole life if it's good. Give me good superhero content, I'm there. And if they just kept making good stuff, they could. I reckon they could have kept that gravy train going.
Because we've wanted this stuff since we were kids. But the general audience out there, they never picked up a freaking comic book.
But they checked out because it became crap. If they kept it good, I reckon they could have kept that gravy train going for ages.
I'm just telling you, the normies noped out.
Oh yeah, because it was crap. I get that completely.
No, it wasn't. It didn't even have time to go into the crap. Yes, really? I'm telling you. I promise you. Okay. And you could just feel it because, like I said, you had 15 years of movies building up to this crescendo, and then they're like, oh, I don't have to care about this anymore.
I just don't know. Maybe it might, but.
And by the way, conventions have not recovered since either.
Well, there's that. But now Marvel is in a state where I don't know if they can recover, even if they make good stuff, and it doesn't look like Brave New World. That certainly did nothing to help them recover.
Well, here's the thing. That's because they're thinking about these billion-dollar movies. Marvel still has what it takes, and Disney and whoever, they have what it takes to make very successful films, but they don't have to be shooting for the billion-dollar franchise every freaking movie, right? They can still make hundreds of millions of dollars off of every movie
if they reeled
do.
it back a bit,
Right.
reduce those budgets, and just made stuff that's good. Speaking of something that people consider to be good, though, this one is up for debate because I didn't think. I thought the first season was boring, but with good moments that showed potential that they mostly.
You're muted.
The audio died.
Hang on.
There you are. There you are.
You're good.
It's Andor, and I brought up the trailer, and it's playing without, and it's not stopping, and I have its noise blaring in my ear.
I heard Andor is pretty. I heard Andor was actually all right and stuff. But I also heard, by the way, what was it? The other one. What was the other one? It's like the Goonies in space with Star Wars. It's like they had to cancel it, I think. But I think it's because Star Wars has been so degraded by Rian Johnson and all these other weirdos and stuff like that, where it's like the name of Star Wars is so low in the mud.
I don't even want to watch the originals anymore. I just
it's kind of hard to watch now. It's like it's so low. It's been so muddied, and they can't just be like, oh, here's something that's actually okay. They have to produce something great. They're gonna have to do something great to get those out of this hole they dug for themselves.
So, hey guys, just let you know, my browser is frozen, so I need to reset it. I'm gonna be.
It happens. Yeah.
I'll let you talk about Andor briefly, but I shouldn't be too long.
Well, back to the Infinite. Someone pointed out as soon as Infinity War, so did the story. It was actually, now that I think about it, it wasn't even Endgame. It was Infinity War when the gas got that. It was like, and so the last one was like, it was already on the decline as far as the market of people and interest at comic book conventions, which I think is a pretty decent metric. But you still there?
I'm still here. So one of the things I wanted them to do was like they needed a new big bad guy, and that like they had with Thanos. I think the difficulty would be like, where do you go after Thanos? Because he's like this big demon person. But the thing is, like, I think the next one would be, I predicted next one should be Doctor Doom, and that's kind of where they came out with. They came out with Doctor Doom, like with the Robert Downey Jr. But like over all the people, I think Doctor Doom would have been like the guy that would pose a Thanos level threat, because he's not only is he a powerful like a prodigy scientist, he's also such a madman with sorcery. He almost became the sorcerer supreme, at least in the comics. And he owns his own island nation and stuff, or something like that. So he has a lot.
An island. Is it
just like by itself? I think maybe. But like he has the resources of an entire nation behind him. He has people behind him they can pull from, a resource he can pull from. He has knowledge. He's super
genius. People love him,
and they love him too. He's not a tyrant. They love him, so they would easily fight and die for him. And he can do like all kinds of things with sorcery and science.
And he's got an army of Doombots.
He's got an army of Doombots. So like, if anyone was going to be able to follow up Thanos, it would be Doctor Doom. So that's kind of my prediction. Like, he has all these things he can do to become the next threat. And so, and that's kind of where they went with. But it has to be focused on him now. Like, every movie has to be building up to this big confrontation with Doctor Doom.
So much is riding on Fantastic Four. I'm not sure Marvel will be able to pull themselves out of the death spiral, but maybe they have to have a consecutive amount of films that are just bangers. And Brave New World has not done it. They're saying that Thunderbolts has got positive test screening. We'll wait and see. I don't think people are going to show up at all, though, because it's just not a well-known enough property.
No, but I think it'll be fun. Thunderbolts looks like it'll be fun.
I hope. I don't want them to go too far with the silliness, and I think they will. I think they're going to try and be, Guardians of the Galaxy and Marvel's, Suicide Squad, and it's like, look, maybe it'll be enjoyable. Suicide Squad was enjoyable, even though it was mostly focused on comedy. So we'll see.
I didn't. I think I said this on one of our streams before. It's like, I think James Gunn won the lotto ticket on the charisma and the chemistry between everybody in Guardians of the Galaxy, that wasn't there in Suicide Squad, and you could like feel it was missing, right? It's like you have, it was just like a bunch of individuals, whereas Guardians, it felt like Groot. How do you know? How do you know when your family is when you can understand what Groot's saying, right?
Chat mentions that, as a Thunderbolt fan, can't be convinced the film is good. I'm a bit like that because I'm a fan of the first comic book run. I loved Thunderbolts, and this is not the Thunderbolts. This has got nothing to do with the original Thunderbolts. It's basically Dark Avengers with whatever, discount secondhand forgotten characters the MCU can spit out that have somewhat of a dark past.
And they got that evil Captain America in there who dared fight terrorists.
He's like the only character I'm mildly interested in as well. Like, I want to see what they're going to do with the Sentry, but I'm almost convinced they're going to botch it. Because
is he Nomad now?
No.
What are they calling him? U.S. agent?
U.S. agent.
Captain America. U.S. agent.
Yeah, U.S. agent. I'm pretty sure. I'm interested to see what they do with him. I think like Walker, what's his name, Walker, has some potential. Bucky, I've always kind of enjoyed, but Falcon and Winter Soldier really soured me on that. I don't care about Yelena. I don't care about really anyone else in it, and it's not the Thunderbolts, which is also annoying. And so I don't think that's going to do anything. And so really, any chance to make them recapture an audience seems to be Fantastic Four, but they have to hit it out of the park. So good luck with that. Are you guys interested in watching Andor season 2?
Yes.
I'll watch it. I hope, because look, parts of Andor 1 was good. It was just so damn boring. That first 3 episodes are almost unforgivable filler.
Well, I watched the first episode. I couldn't go back to it. I was like, "This
really?"
It's like if like Game of Thrones style storytelling, but not as good. Like, okay, we have Andor. Here's a pretty cool little scene, I guess, where he gets in trouble and shoots these guys. And then I thought it was going to build up to like, oh man, he's going to be on the run. They're going to attack him. But no, instead of that, it's like character, new character. And then it kind of meanders until the episode just kind of ends. And I was like, what is this crap? People tell me
like, how come
I was not impressed with the ending.
Tries to find his sister.
But parts of it was good.
It was good. It was good.
Andor to me is one of the least bad things Disney has made recently, which is not an endorsement or a compliment, really. Interestingly enough, I probably enjoyed Skeleton Crew more than Andor. That's one that I could actually say I enjoyed it. No one gives a crap about it. It's like the only two, like, could you call Andor not terrible? But even if you could, there's like the 2 things that has some measure of competence that Disney stars have made. No one gives a crap about or has bothered watching at all. So we'll see how Andor season 2 goes.
I think it's a lot to do with Andor. Andor is a slow build, and
it is.
I don't. As long as something's good, I don't care if it's slow. So,
let's wrap up with the last super chats and wave everyone a good day. But it's been a fun stream. We've got Infernal Paladin for $2 says Eminence and Shadow. The characters and world are great. All righty. There's been some good recommendations so far that I'm going to have to check out from this stream. JamCal X, $5 says, Aura Battle Dunbine is the predecessor of Isekai Mecha. It's basically Gundam in a fantasy setting with beetle-like knights made with dragon parts. See, that sounds cool. That does sound cool. Thank you, JamCal X. And then Justin LW 2001 for $5 says, has anyone on the panel read Dungeon Crawler Carl series? Earth and humanity and animals are isekai'd for materials and aliens entertainment. I
saw it. I've been advertised that series. It has good reviews.
Okay. Dungeon Crawler Carl. There's so many, dude. It's just like back in my day, you could actually keep up with the anime releases somewhat. The industry has grown so much that there's too much. And it's actually hard to sift through the slop to the good, but there is still a lot of good being made. And so I have to kind of wait until like enough recommendations come out for me to say, okay, I'll give it a go. That's what it was like with Free Ren. I saw Free Ren mentioned quite a bit to the point where it piqued my interest enough where I'm like, okay, I'll give it a look. And I actually really liked Free Ren. Surprising.
It's excellent. Excellent. and somehow even upset all of Twitter. It's just somehow. It didn't even try.
Yeah.
Like, here's some bad guys, and then Twitter took that personally.
It's so funny how triggered they are. Irredeemable races. So fascist of you. It's like, it's a fantasy trope. What is wrong with these people? David P for $5 says, Shad, you might be able to tell I remember watching Tekkaman Blade as a kid. I love that profile picture. I actually want to buy, I have such nostalgic love for Tekkaman. I think I want to buy one of those really good articulating action figures of him. Because Tekkaman, man, for me, it's Tekkaman because that's what it was as a kid. But yeah, absolutely. I can see that you're a fan, man. That's awesome. Thank you for the super chat. And Buck Williams, $5 says, you might like The Witch and the Night Will Survive. Not isekai, but still fantasy. Manga, no anime yet. I might give it a go. Like, I really want anime to do better medieval fantasy. They're getting better, but they're not there yet. I mean, I've started listening to on audiobook, Lord of the Rings. Holy crap, man. I still think it holds up. It's written in such a different style. Like, the info dumps at the beginning of the book are just insane. But the world building is so good. I think that's why it's
why I can't read Tolkien.
Just the info dumps?
Oh my gosh, dude. The color of every blade of grass. It's like, come on, man. Can we just move the story along?
It's much easier to consume as an audiobook. And I just put it on the background in something. And the world building is just so damn good. So solid. And when he refers to things in the past, he's referring to like full-blown histories is already written. It's like, that's a rich living world, it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's a contrast when I'd go from that to a lot of these isekai fantasy ones, or just anime fantasies where they haven't done, and you don't need to do Tolkien level world building, just like give it some depth, and Frieren kind of did that, especially the history that they go through with her past, and they show the map where the northern countries, and they call it heaven and other things like that. So at least Frieren has better world building, and they go into some of the structure of the magic, universities, and that it was started by that.
How'd you like Dankin? I saw that character, like, this guy's badass.
I liked him. Like
this old wizened mage and stuff.
Frieren did a good job fleshing out side characters more than I was expecting. I thought that psycho, magic girl was just going to be a bit of a throw, but then they showed no, she's got a bit more. I
even thought she was going to be a villain, but no, she's kind of just part of the team, and they never really actually fight her.
Yep.
Bell, I never actually fight her.
Frieren it catches you by surprise by the subtle depth it has to it, where I wasn't expecting that. It's a slower burn, but that's to its credit, honestly. So there is some good stuff there.
I really like when Dankin fought Frieren, and of course he couldn't win against her, but he's like really powerful. And then at the end, they're like, "Oh man, we lost the bird. We're not gonna win." And they find like this last group with a bird in their clutches. And then Dankin's like, "Okay, we have no more mana. How are you gonna?" Or they asked Dankin like, "How you have no more mana? How are you gonna fight him with fists?" And he starts beating him up with his own fists. Like, this is a pretty badass guy.
I know. One of the things I'd like is when they're fighting Frieren's doppelganger, and it actually hints at just how powerful she is. Like, she's got some spells that she's got locked away that are just insane. I really like that part. What was one of the other parts I really liked? It was on my mind, and then it just I also kind of like the fact that she's one of the most powerful mages in the world, yet she still has these blind spots where she's just either she hasn't practiced much in them, she's still weak in certain areas, she's still naive, especially with how she constantly gets trapped in mimics, and the fact that she's the most powerful mage in the world, but she didn't pass the university test just because of the bias of the teacher, but it's also kind of explained, and I kind of like that, even though she's so powerful, there's good parts to it, man.
Yeah, there was that part where they said, okay, Miss Frieren, the thing says it's like 99.9999% a mimic, She's like, well, that 0.1%.
It might not be, and there could be grimoires in it. I like
the legends are told by adventurers who ignore the 99%.
She's this 1,000-year-old elf and still has these immature parts of her personality, which are just endearing. Like she's horrible waking up in the morning, and Fern has to kind of baby her sometimes, even though she technically raised Fern, mostly by herself, and it's just fun. And then again, the fact that she has trouble kind of understanding human, connections and flow of time and stuff. There's some really good parts to Free Ren. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next season. So let's start to sign off. Mike, I can see that you are showing something that I know exactly what that is. So
you know what deal?
Yeah,
the top half of the page has something that might be a little
spoilery. Yeah.
But yeah, I got 2 more pages and I forgot to send them to you earlier. So here's one of them.
Yeah. So we are still moving forward. It's slow, but it's a progress.
This page 58.
Yeah, Shadow the Conqueror, Volume 2, and I mean, all the line work is done. It's just trying to get the colors done, and that's taking a while. But we're getting there slowly, slowly but surely. So yeah, some people recognize what that part is. Like, yeah, that part.
That's the part. No, we didn't give up on Shadow of the Conqueror. We're just
our colorist bailed on us, and that was after months and months of trying to follow up with him and things, and then took ages to try and secure a new one, and that's all with the distraction.
And then that guy took forever to get even started, so I fired him to get this guy, and then he has been turning in work regularly but slowly, which is grindingly painful. But it's beautiful.
It's looking great, and we are still making progress on it, just slowly, frustratingly slowly, but it'll get there.
Yeah.
All righty, let's sign off. Mike, anything you want to shout out or mention as we?
No. You can sub to my channel if you want. I haven't been. I've just been doing live streams. I did a auction last Friday. We're probably going to do another auction in another couple of weeks if you guys like original art. Me and some of my pro artist friends get together, and I just did a real fast one with no heads up to anybody last week, but we should do another one soon if you want to grab some cool original art and just hang out with us on a Friday night. Awesome. Maybe Thursday, I'm not sure.
And LitDev, you mentioned you're working on a really big kind of video essay.
Really big video. It's getting pretty close to being 2 hours long, but it's going to be this epic takedown of the Last Jedi, going to touching on why or the topic that no one wanted to touch on the Last Jedi because it was either cringe or not acceptable, and that is the reason Last Jedi hates men. And the reason why you hate it, why it felt like it attacked you, because it attacked the heart of Star Wars, and it attacked specifically traditional heroism and masculinity. I would break it down and then go like piece by piece by piece and give you references and philosophy behind it, hero's journey references, things like that. So it's taken a while. But it's not even going to go in chronological order. It's going to go in order of topic. Like, okay, it doesn't honor the characters. It could have done this, or this is how it could have gone. Here's an example is how it could have honored the character in a better way, or like it's questioning like why did they choose this? Why did they make this choice for the narrative if they didn't hate traditional heroism and they didn't dislike men? Like why is this happening? And then the next one is kind of like going over the hatred of heroism itself. So it's from that perspective, the idea of it's attack and assault on the elements that build up the movie, not just like, oh, it's a bad movie, because that's been done before. I'm going into the elements of it and why you felt so attacked and betrayed by the movie, even if you don't realize exactly why. You might have felt it, but you don't know why you felt that way. So I'm going to break it down.
I can't wait to check it out, man. You make awesome video essays. So I love it. And for me, people know where I am. Culture Crusade. Thank you everyone for joining us. We do this weekly, and there'll be the occasional video that pop up here on Night's Watch when I feel inspired or got the time. And of course, Shadiversity videos coming out, and I'm still working on my novel. Trying to push forward with that. I got 2 chapters done last week, and so this week has been a bit harder for me to try and push forward, but still early in the week, so I hope to get more done. And I'm still on track to finishing it off by halfway into the year. That's the goal. That's the goal. Hopefully I'll be able to do it because I'm very excited for my next novel. So thanks, everyone. You're all awesome. Appreciate you showing up, and we'll see you all later. So as always, stay on watch.